Hello there front-end developers, hope you are doing well. Well, if not, you will be feeling great after knowing what are CSS variables and container queries inside the CSS. I heartwarmingly welcome you all to the Modern CSS Part 2. Just in case if you have missed the Part 1, in which I have explained the display grid and flex in the simplest way possible, make sure you watch it because it might help a lot while building modern CSS layout. Till the end of this video, you will learn what are CSS variables and container queries inside CSS and their use cases. Without any further talks, let's dive into them. First, let's dive into the CSS variables. Just in case if you're familiar with the CSS variables, you can skip it to the CSS container queries. I bet that you have heard a lot about the CSS variables since it's the most useful method to apply any style in our CSS. Basically, CSS variables are the same as the variables in the other languages if you're familiar with the JavaScript, C++ or any other programming language. But if you're not familiar with the variables in any languages, well, it's simply the simplest way to use anything in everywhere. Inside the CSS, variables are working as a predefined design that we can use it anywhere. Okay, now let me show you how variables work inside the CSS. For example, I'm going to create a div. Inside this div, I'm going to create 3 paragraphs by the classes of the child. I'm gonna make it 3. So the parent is gonna be named to parent. Then we're gonna come to style sheet, and inside here we're going to say, first of all, we're going to reset the margin and padding of the elements. Margin of the elements should be also 0. So what do we need over here? I want to create a simple navbar, so I will need to style the parent. I will say that dot parent should be display flexed. The justify content should be space between, and the align item should be centered. The height should be 100 px. Let's change it to 100 pixels, and the background color should be light. Let's change it to black. Okay, now we are moving to the children, so I'm gonna say the child should have a color of the yellow and the font size. The font size should be at least 20 pixels. So when I come over the screen, as you can see that we are not showing anything. Why? Because we are not having any content inside the paragraph. So we're going to say the first one home, the second one, we're going to say the second one contact, and the third one about. Let's take an example of simple navbar that we see usually in our screen. So this is a navbar that I have seen on my screen, and below this I'm going to create another div. Like we're going to say that this is the hero section. We're going to name it to hero, and inside this hero section I'm going to make a h1, and the same I will say that the hero should have a background color of black and the color of yellow. Whatever is inside this hero parent, it should be colored to yellow. So let me write something over here, lorem of 10, save and refresh. As you can see that this is shown over here. What else I need to do? I need to give it a little padding. So I'm going to say that from each side the padding should be at least 10 pixels, or let me make it to 50 pixels. So this is a simple design that I've created. Now the first element that we see is our navbar. Inside this navbar we are having 3 childs, the home, contact and about. And the second element that we see is a div. We have created an h1 inside the div. So simply CSS variables are making our work easier. For example, in this design you can see that I have used 2 background colors on the 2 different elements. The background color black is used in 2 different elements, while the color of the yellow is also used in 2 different elements. First is the paragraph which we used inside our navbar. The second is the element of h1 that we created. We have also used the color of yellow inside it. So we see that this color yellow and this color yellow is common. Just take an example that we have changed our website theme. Like I want to say that I want to change the whole text which are available in my website, that should be changed to color blue. So I would need probably like, I should change this to blue, and I should also change this to blue. When I save and refresh, as you can see that this has changed from color yellow to color blue. But just Imagine that we have hundreds or thousands of elements that have used exact color. So what I need over here is to change a single line that should take effect over the all elements that we have in our website. So I'm going to create a variable. Now for creating variable, we must use two dash or two minus to use the variables or to name the variable. For example, I want a variable by the name of var. So first of all, I want to come here and use the double dash. After this, we are gonna name our variable. So as I said that I am going to name it to var, and after that we are going to use this. So inside this var we can put whatever value we want. It's going to work as a variable inside our CSS. For example, I'm gonna say it to space. I'm gonna say the value to 20 pixels. So now this 20 pixels is stored inside this space, and this space is a variable that we can use all in this parent class. So let me make a padding. For example, we are going to say the padding of it should be 10 pixels. So what I need over here is a padding and a margin for this element. Well, we're going to say the margin of it also should be 10 pixels. So what I need over here is that I want to apply this space to this padding and also to this margin. For example, for now our space variable is 20 pixels. So what I need, the padding of the element should be also 20 pixels and the margin of the element should be also 20 pixels. Like if I change these variables, these both should be changed at the same time. So what do we need over here? I need to change this to var. When we use var, it means that we are not using any simple value. Instead of simple value, we are using a variable. I'm gonna say it to dash dash space. The exact name that we used in our variable, that's the same. So over here I have used the variable of space for the padding, and the same variable goes to the margin. So I'm gonna say double dash space. Sorry, the space name is wrong. Space. And I'm going to name this also to space, the third one also to space. So is space. So when I come save and refresh this, as you can see that this element has gotten a padding and a margin of 20 pixels. Now the benefit of using CSS variable is that when I change it to, for example, I'm gonna say that the top and bottom should be 10 pixel and the left and right should be 20 pixel. As you can see that the exact margin and padding has applied for both. We see that we are having a margin left and right of 20 pixel and the margin top and bottom of 10 pixel, top and bottom of 10 pixel and the left right of 20 pixels. Now this is the benefit of using CSS variables. Now there is a little issue over here. So for example, I want this hero section to also take the exact space that I have applied inside this parent. So I cannot use, like I will say var, and inside this var I'm going to use space. So when I save and refresh, it's not applied to this h1. Why? Because we did define the space variables, but we defined it inside this parent. So whenever we are inside this parent, we can use only this CSS variable. But if you are outside of that CSS, so we cannot use. We did define the variable inside the parent, so we can only use it inside that parent. We cannot use it inside that child or inside this hero. So what I need over here, I want this variable space to work in our all classes. Like I want to define this space somewhere that should work also in parent, child or in hero. Over here I'm gonna say root. Simply the root means that whatever is defined inside this root, we can use it wherever we want. So I'm gonna say that this space should go inside this root. The pairing of this element, the top and bottom is 10 pixel and the left and right is 20 pixel. Now it doesn't matter that whether we use the spaces or we can use the background color or the primary secondary color. So what else do I need over here? For example, I'm gonna say that the dash dash primary color of my website, for example, it should be black, and the secondary color of my website should be, we can say, yellow. So the primary color is black and secondary color is yellow over here. When I come over this parent, so we can see that inside this parent we are having a background color of black. Instead of this, I can change it to var and primary color, and of course we can also change this also. We are going to say var, inside this var we are going to say primary color. The same goes to the color. We say that the color of it should be also taken from the variable, so we will say secondary color, and inside this, where is it, inside this child, we're going to say a variable of secondary color. So when I save and refresh, as you can see that the primary color is changed to the black, secondary color of my website is yellow. So I will use the secondary color wherever the text is inside my website, and I will use the primary color wherever an element is having a background. So the benefit of using this variable is that whenever I change this to something else, for example, I'm going to say the secondary color should be blue, the navbar and the div that we created below that is both changed at the same time. Now this is the benefit of using the CSS variables. In most cases we use CSS variables for theming our website, like we can use the dark mode and light mode theme in our website. Like I want to define a variable that should have a color and that should have background color, and inside the light mode we will use the light colors, and inside the dark mode we will use the dark color. So what I need is just to change the 2 or 3 variables that will change my entire website design at once. This was all about the variables inside the CSS. I hope that it has been clear so far for you. Now let's dive into the container queries and see its use cases. As you know, to make your website look outstanding, you must be familiar with the responsiveness inside the website. The website should be the way that should work in all multiple devices. Like we want a website that should work in our mobile, we want a website that should work in our laptop, desktop and tablet. But if you're not familiar with the CSS media queries, we will work a little bit over that. But if you want me to dive deep into the media queries, just say it in the comment section and I will make a full tutorial over that. So let's first explain how does media queries work inside our CSS. So in this design, I have created a simple card. The first card is bigger than the other one, and the second element that you see is the items, inside which I have used 3 more items. The first, the second and the third, and I have used the background color of light blue inside the body and a padding of 12 pixel. The items are displayed in grid. Just in case if you are not familiar with the display grid, I have made a full video over the display grid and flex in my previous videos, so make sure you watch it if you don't know. The grid template columns, it means that how many columns should we have in a row. I said that it should have 3, and each element should have a gap of 10 pixels between each other. Now the item should have a background color of white and the border radius of 12 pixel, padding of 10 pixel. Nothing very fancy, but we see this in our screen. Like this is the first card, the second, third and the fourth card, they are all appeared in one row because we have used display grid on it, and the first card is independent. So what I need over here, when I come and resize the screen, I want it to adjust themselves accordingly. In the small screen, I want these children to appear on top of each other, but when I use the larger screen, it should be appear in front of each other. So what I need over here is to define a media query. I will say that at the rate media, and after media, we will use only screen end. And inside this bracket, we will define our width. So the maximum or the minimum width is rich, it will hit a custom design. So I will use the minimum width. Minimum dash width should be 500. So when the screen hits the 500 pixel, I mean that it should be above than 500 pixel. So these styles that we will use over here will be defined to the layouts. So for example, I'm going to say that the items class should have a grid template columns of repeat 3 and the min max should be 0.1. When I come save and refresh, we will not see any difference over here. Why is that? Because from first we will always start our device size from small, or our design from a small screen. I want each row to have a single item, so I will change it to 1, and when a screen breaks this point, so we will use the 3 items in each row. Over here, as you can see, that is shown that what's the width of our screen. Let me see. Okay, see, when I cross the 500 pixels, by default it's appeared on top of each other, but when I cross the 500 pixels, they are appeared in front of each other by default. Pretty straightforward that when I am in the small screen, the element or the children will appear on top of each other, because we use these grid template columns repeat of 1. It means that each row should have a single column, and I say that in the media screen, when the minimum width of 500 pixel is crossed, so every grid template column should be repeated 3 times. It means that each element or each row should have 3 columns in a row. So when I cross this 500 pixels, as you can see that the row will have a 3 column. When I move back below the 500 pixel, so you'll see each item on a row. The media queries are pretty straightforward and it can make our design very good, because you know that the website which are responsive are more preferred with the website which are not responsive. But there's a minor problem with the media queries. Remember that the media queries is always dependent on the width of the screen. No matter what, it's always dependent on the width of the screen. What if I say that, for example, in the code when I show you, the item or the div that we have used on the first, this element is having the same class as the second elements. This item and this item, they are having both the same classes. So for example, I will say that the item from first, the display of it should be flex, and the flex direction of it should be column. By default, the flex direction of it should be column, and when the screen size is smaller, we can change the flex direction of it to the row. By default, these three elements that we are seeing in the bottom, they are looking pretty good, but what I need over here is I want this image to take this much of space and this text to take this much of space. Like I want to make it half. When I come to this and I change the display of this to flex, so there's a minor problem over here. So first of all, we need to adjust the where is it, the image width. So we will say that the image width will be 50% and the text will appear over there. And also what we need is the add items, and we can say that it should have a gap of the 10 pixel. It's looking pretty good. When I change the screen width to the smaller size, so you will see that these elements on the bottom, they are starting to collapse on each other. Like when I change to a little bit more smaller, as you can see that our design is not looking good on the bottom, but it is looking good in the top. So what does a container query do? It's basically adjusting any style according to the width of the parent, and we are allowed to define its own parent on our own will. So if I take an example of this item card, this is the item card that's having a background color of white. I want to do something that this image and this text, they should be responsive according to the size of the item or according to the size of the card. So for example, I want to say that if this card is having a minimum width of the 200 pixels, so the item, the card and the text should be appeared on top of each other. And if this item or if this card is having more than 200 pixels width, so the children should be appeared in front of each other. Now this is the usage of the container queries. We can define any styles according to any specific container. As I said that it should not be adjusting the design according to the width of the screen, but instead it should adjust its design according to the width of their parent. So the parent of this text and this image is this item card, and the parent of these text and images are also the item card. So when I say that this item card is having minimum width of 200 pixels, each item should be appeared on top of each other. And if this card is having more than 200 pixels width, so each item should be appeared, or each children should be appeared in front of each other. Very straightforward. Let me explain it with the code. Before starting off with the container queries, I have made just a little adjustments. I did made a parent for both of the item, this item and the items classes, and inside it I've named the parent to container, and inside the container I've said that display should be grid and the grid template columns should be 2. I mean that in each row 2 columns should be appeared and the gap between them should be 10 pixels. So our design will look like this. Basically it will be a bit easier to understand in this design. So basically what I did meant over there was that as you can see that in this card or in this item, our design is looking pretty good, but in these 3 cards, our design is looking a disaster. Before starting the container queries, we must define the container itself. So for example, inside this code, I will use these items parent as a container for myself. These items should be a container for these children. So I will come over the items class and I will say that the container type. Inside this container type, we mostly use the inline size, but in a very rare case, we will use the size, because the size is always dependent on the height, which we definitely don't want. But if we use the inline size, so it's dependent on the width of the screen, which is also used for responsiveness in a website. So for now, we will use the inline size. Just in a very rare cases, we will use this size only property. I have defined the items is the container for the children. So what I need over here, the second step is that we will use @container. So now this @container means that we will define our style according to a container width. So after this container, we will use a bracket. Now inside this bracket, we will use the minimum width or the maximum width. Like I want to say that if the minimum width of the container is less than 500 pixels, so it should apply these styles, and if it is more than 500 pixels, so it should apply a specific styles. But instead of using this, I will recommend using only width. Now what's the difference between minimum width and only width? The minimum width is calculating the minimum width of an element. Like for example, if we set the element minimum width of an element to 500 pixels, so now this exact 500 pixels will not be counted at the minimum width of 500 pixels. For example, our screen sizes, when I come to inspect element, so when we see that, for example, I'm going to use a 500 width for this screen, so I'll come to the 500. So you'll see that this 500 pixel, this exact 500 pixels, okay, you will see that this exact 500 pixels, this won't be counted inside the minimum width of the 500 pixels, because minimum width means that if it is less than 500 pixels, so it will not be counted inside that. But instead of using the minimum width, I will recommend using the width only property. Now with the width only property, we can use the greater or less assignment. For example, I want to say that if the width is less than 500 pixel. So in this example, it's pretty straightforward that we will say that if our width is, or our container width is more than 500 pixels, it won't be counted inside this style. Even if it is 500 pixel, it also won't be counted inside this style. But if it's 499 pixel, then it will be counted inside this design. So basically, this is the benefit of using the width rather than using the minimum width. You can also use this width inside the media queries. Like I will say that if the width is less than 500 pixels, so it should apply these designs, and if it's more than or equal to 500 pixels, so it should not use these designs. So let's move to the topic that we were about to discuss. Inside this container, I want the item, this card, to have a flex direction of column if the width of the parent is less than 500 pixels. So I will say that the item should have a flex direction. Item should have a flex direction of column. As you know that by default the flex direction of an element is set it to row when we use the display flex inside our style, but we can change it from row to column by using the flex direction. So when I come over here, now as you can see that they are having both the class of the item, this div and these divs. So now we can see totally different designs according to their parent. When I use the bigger screen, as you can see that these items are appeared on top of each other while they both are having the same class of item. But just because we have used the container width and the width of this element is less than 500 pixels, so it will apply this design, and if it is more than 500 pixels, so it will apply their default design. For now, you won't be able to see any differences because this 500 pixel is a lot, so we will use the 400 pixel instead of 500. Okay, when I save and refresh, as you can see that now when the screen is bigger, so we will see the same design for both elements. But when I change to a smaller size, these card elements will be appeared on top of each other, while this card element will be appeared in front of each other. Right now, I know that this design is not looking good, but in the modern websites, these container queries are very useful in the modern layouts. Just let me fix the images. So I'll say that the object fit should be covered. So now it's looking not very well, but it's looking better. So now, as you can see that when I use a bigger screen size, so each design or each item, each card will be appeared in front of each other. But when I change the screen width to a smaller width, so inside this card, everything will be the same. But inside these three cards, the design will be changed. The flex direction from row will be changed to column. If you haven't understood the container queries, just let me recap it for you. Now, while using the responsive design inside the media queries, the only problem that we are facing that inside the media queries, the responsiveness of the design is always set it according to the width of the screen. Now, what I wanted over there was that I wanted to set a specific design according to the width of the specific element. Now it depends that whether we want to use the media queries or we want to use the container queries according to our own need. What do we need? If we need the screen sizes to be adjusted according to the screen, so we will use the responsiveness in the media queries. But if we wanted to adjust the styles according to the specific element or according to the specific div, so then we will use the container queries in our CSS. If you want to adjust the style according to the screen, you will use the media query, and if you want to adjust the style according to the specific element, you will use the container queries. Very straightforward. I hope that the CSS variables and the container queries, they are both very clear. I hope that you will create something amazing by using CSS variables and the container queries. If you have any question, just feel free to ask in the comment section. See you in the next video. Until then, have a great time coding.